Okay, hello everybody. My name is Pieter Omvlee. I'm the founder of Bohemian Coding, and we are the makers of Sketch. Now, I've given a few talks in the past, and they've always been me on a big stage with big lights shining at me, and as a result, the audience being somewhat of a thing down there that I couldn't see. This is quite different. Anyway, we'll try. So for a bit of background, for those of you who don't know yet about Sketch, it is what you would call a vector drawing app for designers and the developers as well. And they use it to make websites, mobile interfaces, icons, things like that. The application started approximately 8 years ago. I was still at university studying computer science. And I was having a go at this indie thing on my own. The application didn't get anywhere in the 4 years after that. But approximately 4 years ago, I teamed up with a designer from Portugal. And we decided to make a version 2 of the application, which he could use to replace Photoshop for him. And our hope was that if we could do it for him, then maybe other designers would also want to make the switch. So we released that 3.5 years ago, and since then adoption has increased, and we've been quite stunned with the success that we've had. And yeah, we're now going head to head with Adobe and specifically Photoshop for these developers. What I want to discuss today is that I think many independent developers are too much focused on writing consumer software. I think the more professional market is large enough, probably more interesting in the long term, and not unimportantly, you can earn more money in that market, I think. But in order to do so, we need to step up our game and stop behaving as indies and adopt more of a business-like approach to everything that we do. And the first step to sort of becoming a real business is pretending to be one and recognize that being an indie is not a badge of honor. It's just a business. So professional software rather than consumer software with a change in attitude. But back to the beginning first. So as I said, I started this 8 years ago, and I was inspired to create indie software for the Mac based on the idols I had back then. Delicious, Library, Panic, Omni Group, Real Mac, those kind of companies made the apps that I also wanted to make. But I had studied computer science. I didn't know anything about business. And so whatever I tried to learn came from blog posts, trying to do what they did, videos of conferences, and me trying to learn how to run a business. And I started to adopt these phrases that you heard over and over again, and I treated them as maxims, which, how do you say, they sounded very convenient to me, and that's probably a sign that they're not quite true. So I want to run through a few of those. For example, a phrase like this, scratch your own itch. The idea there is that you should build an app for a problem that you have, because only then will you know, one, if you have actually solved it, and two, it's more of a guarantee that you'll be interested in it for the long run. And in a way, it is true. You should probably not go writing an app for a dentist if you have no idea what a dentist wants and you really don't care about dentistry. But it's also a bit too convenient in a way. It would be nice if we could all solve the problems that we ourselves are having and make a living doing so. But what if for example, in my case, I am the typical hipster, coffee drinking. I like to take photos. I listen to podcasts. I use RSS to get my news. Should I be making another one of those apps? Should I make another photo filter app? Another podcasting app? Probably not. So what do you do if you don't really have an itch to scratch? And I think many of us don't really have that itch. And if we are trying to do the thing that we might have a slight itch for, we end up in an overcrowded market, which cannot possibly sustain us. So instead you might have to team up with someone else who has that itch, like I did with my designer. He had an actual itch that we could turn into a real product. But me, on my own, I don't really have any itch. Another one of those is a good app will sell itself, and it sounds wonderful, and it would be nice if this were true, but I checked on Wikipedia just before this talk, and there are 1.4 million apps in the App Store. The chances that your app will just sell itself based on its own merits are slim. A good app, that definitely helps, but it can't do without sales, marketing, promotion, trying to build a community around your app and all those things. But it's not good enough in itself. A more dangerous one is this: user experience is your business plan. I heard this one do the rounds quite a few years ago in the days of iOS 3, I guess. I just started to make apps. And the developer conferences I went to, they started to invite designers to speak on how we should use their skills, so that we could finally go independent and stop listening to other people who didn't really know what was needed, and we could finally be our own boss. And if only we had design, then the application would sell itself. So it is a variation on the a good app will sell itself that we saw before. But a business plan is actually quite an important thing to have. You should know what your market is, what is the size of it is, your competitors, how you are going to make money, and how are you going to make money after the first spike of sales dies down. User experience answers none of that. So all these phrases I adopted and then abandoned over time as I realized they were not really helpful. And they were not really replaced by anything. Just I was too busy running a business and never stopped to think on how I actually thought a business should be run. That was until 2 years ago, I guess, people started to write these blog posts about the death of indie software on the App Store. Usually Brent Simmons would write something, then a dozen other people would write blog posts in response, and one of the common threads there was, this is Apple's fault. The way they run the App Store basically makes it impossible for indies to make a living here. I think that's a bit too simple. Apple definitely has a bad part to play here, I think, but we can't blame them for all of our problems. I do want to take a quick minute here. Maybe someone from Apple is here, incognito in the audience, who needs a reminder on all the things that are wrong with the App Store. So 1 minute. A small selection of the issues, especially for someone making software like us. The lack of trial versions or paid upgrades makes it very, very difficult to build serious, in-depth apps that you can work on for longer periods of times. The fact that support is such a headache, you get no contact details of the people who buy your app. The easiest way for them to contact you is to leave a 1-star rating, which you can then not respond to. And if they do contact you, you can't even give them a refund. If you have a critical update to get out, well, you have to wait a week, or you have to bag them for an expedited review, which is silly. Purchases that are tied to iTunes, which is very convenient for consumers, but if you're trying to sell professional software, this is more of an issue. For example, Sketch costs $99, and you might want to charge it to the, you might want your boss to pay for the app, or you have a separate business account that you would want to declare these expenses to. Having it all tied to your personal account is not really helpful. With that, you also cannot, we as a company cannot offer volume discounts, educational discounts, extending licenses, moving licenses from one person to the other. All the things that as a business you would expect to be able to do and your customers expect you to be able to do for them, we can't. On the Mac then we have sandboxing, which is a ridiculous restriction, which unfortunately Apple has the luxury of ignoring. We don't. On the Mac App Store, we still don't get any analytics, and for all the help they give us with this, they take 30% of our revenue, which is a lot of money. So if someone from Apple is here, please. I do think this kind of stuff results in apps that Apple would never dare to sell in their hardware stores if they were physical products. But because somehow it is the software, they don't mind to sell to sell these games that are just optimized to extract as much money. And I think it's sad, it's an issue, but I think it is also too easy to blame all of our problems on Apple. And in any case, we've been complaining about this since iOS 2, we're now at iOS 9. So if we're waiting for Apple to fix this for us, we'll be out of business before that happens. One thing though, if you can somehow make it outside the App Store, if you're on the Mac and you're not selling outside the Mac App Store, you probably should. If on iOS you can somehow get away with charging a subscription for your service outside the App Store, then I think that would also be a good idea. But it's not just Apple. I think many of us, as I said, are trying to sell into the wrong market. We are trying to sell to consumers in a discount store. We are trying to have more of a, how do you say, we're not selling into a high-end boutique. We're selling into a dollar store where half of the stuff is free. And then even 99 cents starts to look expensive in comparison. There's also the case of we're just not able to provide enough value to these customers. The fact that I have built a photo filter app which has 100 more filters than Apple's built-in app is nice, but it's not actually providing enough value that I'm able to charge serious money for this. Apple has a decent built-in to-do app. If I build my own to-do app, I might save the user a few taps, but how much is that really worth to just the casual consumers? Probably not much. So we're not able to provide enough value, and as a result, we're not able to extract enough value either. And just the fact that the competition is really strong here makes it very difficult to make a good living. And I think this is a case of what I mentioned earlier, us trying to build something that scratches our own itch is backfiring. Instead, I think we should be more focused on serving professional users. And if, for example, in our case, Sketch, all these designers and developers, they have the question of which app am I going to buy? They know they're going to need something, be it Photoshop or Sketch or whatever else, but they need something. So, and that is already an enormous step up from, is there actually an app for this? Do I need that app? No, they need an app. The question is, which app? Also, this is why these people are in business. A designer can't do what they do without an app. They make money using your app, or your app solves something for them which allows them to stay in business. As a result, you're able to charge much more money than 99 cents to a consumer who doesn't really care. And yes, this might not scratch your own itch. I am not a professional designer myself. I don't really need Sketch. We have designers who do, but I don't really need it. But I still got started with this kind of application because I have, I had an interest in this market, but not enough that I really knew what was needed. But it can be a great business, and you can end up with a lot of loyal fans who use your application every day. And any improvements that you make to your app will have tremendous benefits to all the people who are using your app. So I think it's a very satisfying market to be in if you can find the right niche. But these more professional users, they come with you should approach them in a slightly different way, I guess. For example, if you have just recently gone indie and you have mixed up your personal and business blog, and you're talking on your blog on how you recently quit your job and your savings account is very quickly going down, and at the same time you're trying to sell them an app which they are going to be using for years. You're not going to instill a lot of confidence in them that you are actually a good partner to invest into. I think it is important to pretend to be a more professional business, and just to act with more confidence than you might naturally have. They need to trust their files to you, their data. They need you to keep it safe. They need to be able to extract that data again 5 years from now. Although those things, they don't really mesh with the idea of a developer in his or her spare bedroom trying to make a go at this indie thing. So you should probably hide that part of it and just present yourself as a trustworthy, reliable business. I also remember the story from a podcast a few years ago. I don't remember which app it was about, but it was a developer who was asked by a prospective customer if he could please raise his price, because at the current price level, they didn't trust the app to be in business a few years from now. And if you, as a business or as a professional, are going to invest time and money into an app, you want that app to stay around. And in this way, pricing is also an excellent way to pretend that you are more professional, more capable than you actually are. A $9 app sounds more like a pro tool than a 99-cent app, even if it's exactly the same app. But in everything, I think it's important that we pretend to be bigger than we are. For example, if we made our website 10 years ago, or if we can't really afford a designer and we made it ourselves, someone will have noticed and will probably have moved on to a competitor who looks a bit more capable. These things are important, especially if you work in software. Your website is your storefront, and if it looks shabby and out of date, your software might be too. I mean, it's a logical conclusion to come to. And these people relying on the App Store as a means to discovery or thinking, like, well, they won't read my website anyway, they'll just go to the App Store anyway, so I don't need to spend a lot of time on my site. I think that would be a mistake. In our case, I like to think of it as us having two kinds of customers. We have designers and developers who directly come to our site, download the trial, decide that they like it, and buy it. Great. But if you are a designer working in a medium, large corporation, you might have to step up to your manager, your IT department, to convince them to buy a volume license for the entire company or for the entire department. And you want this pitch from the designer to the IT department to go as smooth as possible as well. So for that as well, you want a professional looking site where you offer flexible purchase options with volume discounts, easy ways to deploy to large number of users, and your website should somehow reflect that you know that this is a need that many of your customers have, and then you can help them with it. You don't want the pitch to go something like, well, we all would like this application, and I know it's only available on the App Store, and I know it's not easy to deploy this, but can we somehow please make this thing happen? You should do everything you can to help this pitch go as smooth as possible. One other thing, besides pretending outwards that we are a more professional business than we are, I think it also helps to pretend to ourselves that we are a more professional business than we actually are. It's why people rent an office even though they could work from their spare bedroom, because they feel more like they're actually doing work. And it may feel strange, like for example, last year in Amsterdam, I rented a desk for 2 months, and I would cycle from home to work every day. And I felt, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was actually being productive, having a real job, doing real work. Just the act of, like everybody else, cycle to work made me feel like a more professional developer, instead of someone who just works in their pajamas from their spare bedroom. So it's the act of pretending to yourself is, I think, also a very helpful thing. For example, right now you might think of yourself primarily as a developer or as a gone indie. And the thing you like to do is write code, but there's this other stuff. You need to answer support, you need to do something about sales and marketing, and all this stuff is eating into the thing that you really want to do, which is write code. Instead, you should probably think of it more as the business, in that every day you think, okay, what should I be doing that has the most impact on my bottom line? How can I increase my revenue? How can I increase my profit? So maybe you should not be adding that next little feature or fixing that very rare bug that nobody comes across, but maybe instead you should look into, for example, how you can sell more licenses outside the App Store, because you don't lose Apple's 30% cut. In the long run, these kind of decisions probably have more impact. Maybe you should redo your site, maybe you should redo your press kit, maybe you should reach out to more magazines and blogs, and in the hope that they write something about you. As a developer, I found it was very, very tempting to just lock myself up in my text editor and just write code. And it feels very productive, but in the long term, it might not be the right thing to do. And I think this is a good attitude for us independent developers to adopt. We might not have gotten started in this business wanting to think too much about money. But if we have financial problems, they don't go away by just ignoring it. We might think like what Walt Disney once said, like we make, what did he say? We make movies to make money, not no. Sorry, we make money to make movies instead of the other way around. And we might be in this business because we like making apps. We're not in this business because we like to make money. We just need the money so that we can keep making apps. But this is a very nice position to be in, if you already have enough money coming in. If you don't, it might help to be a bit more focused on that. And I think one of the things that some of us might still have stuck in their mind is this calculation we made before we went indie. Like, I need to make at least $50,000 or $80,000 a year to maintain my current standard of living, because I have health care, and I need to pay for my children in school, those kind of things. So I need to be making 80,000 a year before I can go indie. And once you have made 80,000, you sort of stop. You think, I have achieved the goal, now I just need to stay above that limit. But what would happen if we instead woke up next Monday after the conferences and say, okay, next year I want to double my revenue. What do I need to do to make that thing happen? As I said earlier, should I be fixing that next little bug or feature? Or maybe I should be doing something else, which has more impact on the application in the long term. It may not be something that we like doing, but it's something that needs doing. And also, I would say, it's like we're all making software for Apple's platforms. And Apple is doing amazingly well. I believe it's the most profitable company in the world. Every year they sell record numbers of iPhones. So we are riding on this enormous wave. And if we are only focused on just making enough to keep going, we will be one of the first victims to go under once the growth lines go flat or down, as will inevitably happen. It's like if you run a restaurant, you can only make a certain number of pizzas every evening before you are either at the maximum capacity for your kitchen or your restaurant, and you will need to buy the lot next to it to expand the area. You're looking at significant capital expenses to keep growing. But we can really sell to everybody with an iPhone, and we can really build a multi-million-dollar business from our spare bedroom. I think recognizing that and trying to aim for that would really help us. So, yeah, pretend to us. Besides pretending to the outside world, also pretend to yourself that you are more than an indie, because I think the first step to becoming bigger is to pretending to be that. Like, for example, one last thing I want to share with you. I got an email like this last year. Someone asking if he could drop by in our offices in San Francisco or New York to buy me a cup of coffee. But we have no offices, and certainly not in San Francisco or New York. Way too expensive, but somehow we had managed to convince some of our customers that we were that kind of, I don't know, large successful business which would have offices in these places. Instead, we are at the moment 13 people, all working from our basement or spare bedroom. But somehow we had managed to convey this impression, which I'm sure this impression helped to get some large, to make some large companies confident enough in our abilities that they were willing to purchase a site license with us. Something they may not have done had they realized that we were back then actually much smaller. And we didn't really know what we were doing. So, yeah, this made me quite proud, as we had sort of, shall I say, pretended successfully. Because I really think that the first step to becoming a more professional business is to pretend to be one, and that we should be focused more on professional levels software. May seem less fancy initially, but I think the problems are more interesting, more deeper, and will allow you to work on the same quality application for a longer time charge a higher price and be more profitable. As I said, the first step to becoming a real business is to pretend to be one. I see that I have run through my presentation a little bit faster than I thought, but I'm out of slides. So thank you all for your attention.